Hello, my name is Leslie, and I'm with the Federation for Children with Special Needs. And today I am going to be bringing you the third session in our SEPAC Summer School for the year 2021. Happy summer, everyone. And this session is going to be talking about setting the stage for success. We've been using family engagement as the theme throughout our SEPAC Summer School this year, using the new Massachusetts frameworks for family engagement and focusing on the first element, which is building positive relationships. Because without that core foundation of a relationship, we really can't start to put on any more elements or really fulfill our tasks and work towards true family engagement in our schools and our communities. But building positive relationships is really a dynamic and ongoing process, and it's not going to happen overnight. Often when SEPACs contact me at the Federation, they're very interested in all of the mechanics about running a SEPAC. Can I share a set of bylaws or a brochure format, and thinking that that's just going to be the first thing that they should start with. And I really want people to focus on the process. And for those attending these sessions, whether you're a SEPAC leader or just a SEPAC member or an interested parent, get involved in the process around building your SEPAC. Get involved in the dialogue that should be happening to form your SEPAC, decide what direction it's going to go in, and how you want to participate and help guide that SEPAC. So today, the learning objectives will be so that you can understand and define core values, use an equity lens on everything that you do, understand and use some steps to develop shared values of your SEPAC, create different types of systems of support for families, because we know there are many different kinds of families, and they all come into the process and into your SEPAC at a different level. And I hope that we can talk about how to deal with difficult conversations, because they do come up. So I want you to start with core values. And why start with core values? It's really what we care about the most, and it's what puts us in a place where we can share something in common with others often. And I think if SEPACs Google values and their school district name, the Cambridge Public School District, you'll find that many organizations within your schools have a set of core values. It could be a parent group, it could be a department, it could be your school committee. And so the process of talking about and defining your core values is a very important and common practice in our state and in our communities. So the values are really fundamental beliefs that guide and motivate your attitudes, your actions. It's your moral compass. It's your true compass. It's knowing that you have something that's helping you lead you in the right direction. We know that every family and individual is unique, but we do have some shared beliefs and values. And those are the things that's going to help us connect in the long run. And they can be bridges to understanding. So I really think it's valuable that SEPACs go through a process, maybe one meeting, a special meeting, some type of gathering where you can talk about the values of your group and see where you align and where you disagree, and where you can come together and use core values as a tool in your work. You can connect these values of your SEPAC to your mission and to your goals. So once you identified some of the values, the core values in your organization, you can use that in a mission statement, which answers where you're going to go, what's your focus, and that's something that you would share with the community, not only maybe your values, but your mission statement, so they know who you are and what your role is. I even like the concept of a vision statement. Where do you want to go? And it shows, that dream, that desire to move forward and to change the world, and that's okay. Change your own little world, and that's part of how you will address setting short and long-term goals for your SEPAC. You can't do everything in 1 year, and often you had a limited membership. So by defining and announcing some of your values and your mission statement, you're going to bring more people to the table because they can align with those values and those goals. All of your decisions, your strategic decisions should be guided by these values and your mission statement. They're the foundation of your group. And so by doing this work in the early stages, doing this work first, it'll help you set you up for success, because we want your actions to really demonstrate your values. I hope that all SEPACs start to use an equity lens. It's really where we're at today. It's just stopping and seeing that, are we deliberately being inclusive when we make our decisions? You know, are we setting ourselves up so that everyone has the opportunity to participate, you know, in decision making and in advisory capacity, so that the SEPAC can be most effective. I love this small drawing of what the difference between equality and equity. You can give every person the same size box, but they all have access. And so sometimes it's rethinking of how we do things and what would be equitable versus equal. And so it's just a different mindset, and something that we should use this lens and have some guiding questions to help us move forward in an equitable way. So who is at the table and who is not? You know, how is this decision being made? A lot of SEPACs use a Roberts rule, maybe majority vote. And is there another way to have decision-making happen in your organization? And maybe it's by consensus, which takes a little longer and it's a little messier process, but would it be more inclusive and allow more voices to be heard at the table? You know, there are assumptions at the foundation of everything we do. We come into everything with a certain you know, bias because of how we've been raised and educated and the experiences that we have. And we just need to be aware of that and sensitive to our own biases. What's the impact of our decision? You know, we have to really look down the road and see, is it going to have the desired impact, or there's other consequences that we really didn't think about in the beginning? And it's okay to reflect back and look at something that you had started, initiated, even finished, and see whether it worked well in your system, so that that wonderful feedback loop is happening, so that you're informed and can make those changes. You know, who's benefiting, who's being left out, and, you know, how can you ensure accountability? So that I think it's important that you do a self-assessment at times to see where your SEPAC is at, so that you can, you know, truly reflect those core values that you set out to establish in the beginning. So I think there's some steps that you can take as an organization to develop some shared values. The members of your organization, or the group, or the group of parents that are interested in this can list 3 or 5 top personal values. You can do it from a personal perspective, or you can do it from the point of view of, what do we want our SEPAC, what are the values that we would champion for our SEPAC? You would share those values among members, maybe draft a final list of where you think you're going, discuss that, refine it. You know, you want to pare it down so that you don't have 10 core values, but maybe 4 to 6, you know, something that people could remember, something that you can share in your publications. You always want to get more feedback, you know, ask who did not participate in this process and get them involved in that, you know, conversation. It's really about reimagining, how do we get our communities to participate, because people have more buy-in to whatever your direction is going in if they're involved at the core, if they're in the beginning, if they're helping to develop some of these core values. And then ultimately you'll finalize and share these and use them as a guidepost in your work. And I really think that the dialogue that happens in the development of this process is so much more important than the outcome. And you ultimately may not agree to publish a set of core values, but the dialogue among the members of your group, in your community, I think is just as important, because it's going to be enlightening to where your community is at, and maybe you're just not ready to publicize shared values, but I think it's a start. So when we did this session live, we had the opportunity to break into groups and to practice. And so when they came back, a reporter from each group came back and started sharing some of the values that they thought would be important for their SEPAC. And they included, I'll list some of them that came out as a result of this exercise, was transparency, accountability, being inclusive, honesty, respect, equity. And we also had a young adult, a student from one of our participants, who wanted to chime in and talked about empathy. And it was really an enlightening moment to hear a young person kind of reflect on what they thought the values of a SEPAC should be, and including the word empathy. And it was really an inspiring moment for the group. And it also really spoke to something that we've been championing this summer, is to include the youth voice in your decision making. And it was one of those aha moments where we said, wow, this was so important that we heard the voice of a young person to help set the direction for the SEPAC and even our group the other evening. So it's so important to hear and involve youth voice in your planning, and even in some of the establishment of your core practices as a SEPAC. So once you have those shared values, you can start building on them. It is always important to focus on your advisory role and make sure that that stays at the heart of what you do. The fact that you're child-centered, and we should listen to the student voice. We learned that the other evening. And that is going to lead to shared decision-making and less conflict within your organization. You still need to be flexible to serve today's needs. So I really think the whole concept of this is to, what we're doing is to help families thrive, not just, get the resources and not just, know their rights, but how can they really, be part of that community, assist your SEPAC in moving forward, make positive change for your district. They need to thrive. And so they're hopefully sharing some of your core values and being aligned with your mission statement. As part of this effort, I think you'll see that you need to set up different types of systems of support. And I want you, as part of this process, to start to understand problems from the perspective of those that are affected by them. So it's different types of families within your communities, different family members, and the students themselves. And that's why the youth voice will be an important element as we build our SEPACs within our community, and because it's really all about them. Start to listen to what people need, and that helps shape your programming and your resources. You might need to seek some support through collaboration, because you can't really do it alone. You're bringing together people, you're bringing together new resources, and that's really all those systems of support that will ultimately help families. Maybe some new partnerships with some groups, not only within your schools, but in your community. And I think the key element here is to empower your stakeholders so that they can step up to lead things within your SEPAC, within your community. Everyone has a different role, and I think you just need to start to look to strength-based focus within your SEPAC. What does somebody have that we can help shine and we can support, so that their vision for their community and their students can move forward in a positive direction. It's all about working together and supporting really unique and different ideas. So part of this whole idea of building relationships, building positive relationships, kind of using this as a foundation for your SEPAC, is knowing that, yes, we're going to disagree at times. It's not so much that the disagreement happens, but it's how your SEPAC reacts to it. How's it dealt with? Is there a disparaging post on a Facebook page, and how are we going to deal with that? It's there. It's part of the process. And I think it's key that you understand that it's okay to disagree. Remain calm, remain respectful, and find some middle ground. I think values are that place where you can find that middle ground. And if these people have been involved in the process, you can return back to the discussion around those core values, and where you align and where you come together, before you address where you disagree. And I always think we should assume best intentions of everyone. We all have bad days. We all come from stressful situations, so that maybe sometimes giving someone the benefit of the doubt before you proceed. It's disagreement is challenging and difficult, but I think it's just a mindset of how you are going to work through that to get to some type of understanding, and some type of agreement, even if it's agree to disagree. So if you're dealing with conflict, some of the tips is to not react at first, is just start to ask some clarifying questions. Try to be understanding of the other person's position, get some more information, stay curious longer so that you can really start to understand before you react. If you have a conflict or a disagreement within a public meeting, and you're a leader of the SEPAC and you're running that meeting, you have a duty to follow the agenda as in a public body. And so to follow that agenda and to remind people that a certain amount of time has been reserved for each topic, and you're trying to stick to the agenda, and that possibly that this can be put on another agenda so that people have the time to learn, reflect, and more people can become involved if they're interested in this topic, because you really want to ensure that you're running that meeting well and using people's time well that came to hear topics according to that agenda. So you can use the strong kind of structure of a public meeting to control the conflict and allow it to be addressed appropriately in the right venue. Because you really need to determine what you can control and what you can't. And you can't control other people's opinions. All I think is you can just allow different perspectives to be brought to the table in a respectful manner. And I think that's where you start to model some of those collaborative problem-solving skills, and always validate where someone's coming from, even though it may not move forward as part of the SEPAC agenda. So I've included some resources for you. This is a nice article about developing team shared values, just some of the steps to go through. I love the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution and Special Education cadre. They have a great website and lots of wonderful resources around dispute resolution, often that goes to special education and that process of mediation or dispute resolution, but there's the underlying approaches are handled really well there. And then the Harvard Law School has a negotiation project with an article about dealing with difficult people that might give you some insight and support as you work through working with people with different ideas, and understanding that sometimes situations are not set up well, especially I think in a virtual platform, to deal with difficult conversations, and finding the correct structure to address people's concerns. So that's the end of session 3. My name is Leslie. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, please email me. And this session will be recorded and put on the Federation's YouTube channel that's accessible off of our website under the playlist 2021 SEPAC Summer School. Thank you.